I think in an in-person retreat, there's something magical that happens just from like collectively actually sharing space with people for an extended period of time. There's something about bringing people together from all over the country or sometimes all over the world and having them be in space with each other and suspend whatever is happening in their lives and just really drop in to a new, unique, nurturing experience that helps them access something that they wouldn't otherwise access if they were doing something online or if they were dropping in for a few hours once a week or even just doing a day thing. There's something different that happens in a longer retreat experience where you're really getting away.
This is Rebel Therapist, a podcast for entrepreneurs who are trained as therapists and who want to level up their businesses, make a bigger impact, feel fulfilled, and be very well paid. I'm your host, Annie Schusler. This week, I'm talking to Rebecca Wong, a therapist and entrepreneur who I've interviewed before, and so many of you have loved hearing from her. Today, we're talking about in-person retreats. If you've ever run an in-person retreat or you're considering adding in-person retreats to your business, you're going to love this conversation. She talks about why in-person retreats are such an important part of her business, some mistakes she and others have made in running retreats, and some things she does to make her retreats such life-changing experiences. We'll also talk about the retreat Rebecca and I are co-leading at the end of April 2019 called Signature Heart and Soul Retreat. Welcome back, Rebecca. Thank you so much for coming back.
Thanks, Annie. I love talking with you.
Me too. So for people who don't know you, will you just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. I'm a lot of different things, but professionally, I am a relationship therapist and I mentor a lot of other therapists as well. And I'm also a podcast host and I lead a few retreats.
So Rebecca, the part of your business I want to talk to you about is that last part you mentioned is the retreats that you've run. About how many in-person retreats have you run?
I think collectively I've run probably 6 or 7 in-person retreats. And then you and I have one coming up in April.
So why in-person retreats? Like, what appeals to you about running them? And what do you think is possible in an in-person retreat that isn't possible in something like a workshop or another shorter experience?
I think in an in-person retreat, there's something magical that happens just from like collectively actually sharing space with people for an extended period of time. There's something about bringing people together from all over the country or sometimes all over the world and having them be in space with each other and suspend whatever is happening in their lives and just really drop in to a new, unique, nurturing experience that helps them access something that they wouldn't otherwise access if they were doing something online or if they were dropping in for a few hours once a week or even just doing a day thing. There's something different that happens in a longer retreat experience where you're really getting away.
And have you had that experience as a participant?
Oh my God. Yeah. I crave it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have certainly had multiple experiences like that. And, some of those experiences are more in like a sit down and learn a lot kind of mode. And some are in a more playful space. There's a lot of different ways that I've had that experience and that I seek it out for myself. I think, it's always a transformational experience. That's the thing that always happens. There's something that kind of clicks inside of me that wakes up and it's like a new direction that I emerge from the retreat with, kind of like a metamorphosis.
Yeah, I've had that too. And I can think, there may be more, but I can think of 3 retreats that I've been on in the last probably 4 years. And I've had that each time that I emerged from the retreat different. That, and one of them was a silent retreat. And I really emerged with a new understanding of meditation that I had just never been able to access before. So that's huge. And in another one, it was a business retreat. And I was able to really just emerge with a new understanding of my business that I just feel like it would have taken months. I think it needed a retreat to emerge with like these other smart people talking and sinking in, and then also going on hikes. And then the the third one was longer ago, and it was kind of a combo of business and spirituality and sinking into yourself. And again, I merged with some new understandings of myself and my relationships.
Let me ask you a question if I can turn this around for a minute.
Yeah.
Because this is from my own experience. Maybe this is less the case on your silent retreat, but much more probably on the others. How about friendships? I find that when I go on retreats, I come back with these profound, like new connections and friendships and relationships.
Absolutely. Yes. Like this last business retreat I went on, I walked away with a new friend and we continue to check in with each other, and we have a shorthand because we were both going through that transformation. So it's really easy for us to just kind of help each other click back into that.
Yeah, I also just, went on a retreat not long ago. It was more of a learning retreat, but in many ways it was a spiritual transformation. And I came back with two lovely women that we keep in touch with. We're all over the country and we check in with each other every month.
Do you also feel like there's something easy about getting back into that space together?
Yeah, they help us like continue the work that we were doing. We were studying under Dr. Estes, Dr. Clarissa Pinkola Estes, and she was talking about how this work was going to be unfolding for many months, if not years, after we left. And every time we check in, we kind of drop right back into that space and review what's been unfolding for each of us.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're really speaking into something that I think is so important. Like I know you've said many times, there's so many ways to run retreats and there's so many different factors. And
there's no right way.
There's no one right way, but it seems like to you and I both, that relationship aspect is really important.
I think that, for me, part of the reason I go on retreat is because I feel maybe disconnected either from myself or from community. And I want that connection back. So when I'm going on retreat, I'm connecting back into something. And if I'm also making new friendships, I'm not feeling isolated.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's connecting with yourself, connecting with other people, but in a very special way that isn't about small talk and it isn't about the surfacey stuff that can be a little bit exhausting, especially for those of us who are introverts.
Yeah, and it gets away from the daily life of it all, right? And so it lets us go deeper because these are new people, because these are people we're meeting in a different scenario. It lets us kind of bypass the everyday.
Mm-hmm. So I'm really curious about how you, as a retreat host, facilitator, help make that possible. What do you find that has worked over these retreats that you've done? What do you find works, or even some things that you find haven't worked to help create that safety and facilitate those relationships?
I think creating space for them is probably the biggest thing. Not overbooking all the time, but giving people a good amount of time to sink into the content that you're delivering and a good amount of time just to be with each other and be with themselves and not overfilling the retreats. That for me is one of the most important pieces.
Okay. Yeah. I've definitely experienced as a participant, I've experienced it both ways where I've been overscheduled, which I kind of would guess is about the retreat host wanting to deliver a lot. But yeah, that space, especially if you're in a beautiful place, you want time and space to either just enjoy nature or enjoy your new friends in nature. Yeah.
Yeah, and also just to take in all the content, take in whatever you're working on and have a seat with yourself and process.
What else is important to you that your participants experience?
So I've run a lot of different kinds of retreats, and I've patched some together along the way, and I've had others that are more deluxe. And I have found that I really, 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 I can't emphasize that word enough, really, like going someplace where I don't have to be I don't have to be wearing 12 different hats while I'm hosting a retreat. I don't also have to be picking up the food and making sure that people have transportation and helping people figuring out accommodations and working, if I have other facilitators coming in, like I don't want to have to do all that coordination and host. I kind of need some place who can do a lot of that coordination so that I can just host. So I need to be held as a leader.
Mm-hmm. So you've done it both ways. You've done it where you're bringing everything together and you've done it where it's at a retreat center, right? Where
I've done it both ways. I've kind of found a home retreat center that I really like, that's local to me, and that I love using. Menlo Resort, which is where we're hosting Signature, and I've run a few retreats there already, and it's much smoother, and I'm calmer, and I'm much more present, and I have more to give. Whereas I've run other retreats where I've patched it all together and it's worked and it's been amazing and it's been transformational. And at the end, I have just been like a pancake on the ground.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have discovered that I need holding too. And that if I'm offering downtime to the people who are coming on the retreats, if I'm offering them things like massages, that I need to make sure I'm also giving a lot of that to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When you run a retreat, how do you figure that part out, Rebecca? How do you figure out how much downtime you're going to get, or do you kind of assume that you're going to get downtime before and after the retreat? Like, how do you balance that stuff?
Yeah, I buffer myself a little bit. So I make sure to give myself downtime after the retreat before re-entering into life. And I try to give myself a little bit of prep time before. Sometimes I like to plan it so that I have at least a full day on both ends to kind of bookend the retreat. And then I take whatever time I can during the retreat. I don't make myself feel obligated, like to have all my meals together with the people that are on the retreat. I give myself permission to take time away and just be with myself. And I've also learned not to, even if I'm doing something that's local and where I live, I've learned not to stay at home.
Tell us more about that.
Well, I find that I need to remove myself from my everyday in order to really be able to give. I've also hosted a retreat in my home, and it was amazing. I love it. Having my family like right there as soon as I wrap up each day it's a lot. It's another
Yeah.
element.
Yeah. More people who are needing you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you've done that too, haven't you, Henny?
So what I've done is I've run a 3-day intensive where I rented a house for the participants, but not for us to stay in, just for us to go to every day.
You didn't run it in your home, though.
I didn't run it in my home. I considered it. Yeah. But my family was away during a couple days of that 3-day intensive. So that worked out perfectly for me. Yeah.
That is perfect. That's like a really nice balance.
Yeah. I mean, no offense to them. I love them
No,
so
we love
much,
our
but
families, but that's the thing, is that we love them and we want to connect with them and we want to give them. But when we're hosting and leading retreats, that's what we're doing the whole time. We're giving and we're holding. And so, we can only give from a well that's full. And if we're giving and then we're giving more and then we're giving more and we're not replenishing and resting, we can't keep giving, or we don't keep giving as well as we can.
Mhm. Yeah. I'm thinking that for people, because people ask me about this all the time, Rebecca, they're really drawn to running in-person retreats as part of their businesses. And I think it's really, I think it's really compelling. I think it's kind of part of a desire that I hear so many people having to return to more in-person interaction and to slow down and kind of get offline some of the time. And I'm wondering if you see it that way too.
Very much. We live in this kind of frenetic, internet-based, always connected, hyper connected world, and we don't have much time or space just to really drop in to
Mhm.
whatever the thing is. Like, I can't tell you how many different educational experiences I've taken online, and a lot of them I don't complete because I get distracted.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't necessarily, like, I go for hikes regularly. I go work out. I do all these things. I give myself white space. Take my downtime. I turn off my phone at certain times of the day, but I still always feel like there's that like to-do pile, that list of things that's always eating at me. And I have some amazing friends and some amazing colleagues, and yet our schedules don't always match up so that we can really just drop into this relationship. And that's the thing about going away on retreat. It's that all of that stuff kind of it's not the pressing thing anymore. When you're away, what's pressing is just being where you are.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think when people look at how they can expand their businesses outside the therapy room, how they can, do more, maybe even scale their offerings, a lot of times people are picturing online courses. And that is one, I mean, I run them. I think they're fantastic. They're one option, but they are not the only option. And in-person retreats are such a beautiful way to, I think, use a lot of what we know how to do as therapists in a transformational way.
Yeah, I think retreats can happen on a lot of different scales. So I often will also run experiential experiences, intensives for like one couple at a time. And I still call that a retreat. Even though we don't have like a huge population that's coming in, I'm only booking it for one couple, but it's still a retreat experience for them and we're still going deep. And then there are other things that I'll run that have like 20 people attending. And so there's different scales that we can host these on. We don't have to feel limited by that.
So it's really more the intention and what you're trying to make happen that makes it a retreat. When you run something for, let's say, one couple, are you kind of curating the experience in terms of like food and?
I do it in two different ways. One way I offer it is just come to my office and for 2 days we'll sit and we'll do some deep therapeutic work. And the other way that I do it is I go back to my retreat center and I have them hold it and they do the food and they have the accommodations and they throw in spa services and they throw in yin yoga or sound meditation or something along those lines. And I show up for blocks of time where I do my deep work with them.
Oh, that option seems like it just creates so much space. Do you notice that, all things being equal, do you notice that when you do this with the retreat, with the help from the retreat center, that the work goes deeper?
I think it's just different. And part of the reason it's different is because they're held differently, because they're getting more support services. It has a different flavor and it's also a different investment. One of the things that I also wanted just to backtrack a little bit to when we were talking about what I get from doing the retreats or what I allow myself to kind of participate in a little bit is that I make sure to book things like sound healings when I'm at the retreat center. And I will take part in those. I find that it's just as important an experience for me to be part of that collective community. And for me also to put myself in a position as a leader who's also receiving.
I really like this tension you're bringing up about being the one who's holding the space, but also stepping into some vulnerability, like stepping into some receiving.
Well, when I'm receiving, there's another practitioner that walks into the room. And so that's their jam and that's what they do. And so they're the ones that are giving it. I'm not receiving from my participants.
Right.
I'm receiving from somebody else.
Right. So what do you think, like some mistakes that I feel like I've seen people make in running retreats have been, we've touched on this, of having just too much, like having too many activities.
I've done that one.
Oh yeah. Like
another one is planning so much and trying to pack it all into a short amount of time.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it's just better to have a longer period of time, because there's many retreats that I've led and they may be 3 or 4 day retreats and people wanted more like 5 or 6 days, even though that might have been a harder sell on the front end. When they're actually on the retreat, they want it to last longer. So those are just kind of places to kind of balance and think about. Other mistakes.
Well, let's stay with that one a little bit. Like, I feel like it comes straight from our frenetic culture, where so many times, whether you're at a training or a retreat or a course or anything, the teacher starts off by saying, we have way more to cover than we have time to cover it. So, and then I always think, I mean, I've done it myself, but I also think, well, then maybe this wasn't planned quite right, because we should probably do the right amount for the time we have.
I think, though, sometimes we also get into a deep place on retreats, because I know I've got into some retreats where I don't think I've overplanned. Even looking back, I don't think I've overplanned. And yet the work could have just used more time.
Yeah.
Because when we go into that deep, processy, transformational space, all of us take different amounts of time to open up and unfold there. And that's the hard part to plan around. One of my most favorite retreats that I've led was at the end of the mentorship program that I ran last year. And it was with the mentorship participants. And so it was part of that whole program. It had been an online program for like 22 weeks or something like that. And then we culminated at the end in this in-person retreat experience. And we didn't plan anything. like other than where we were going to go and what time our meals were going to be, and maybe some supportive services like sound healing, or different people had different spa treatments at different times. And maybe there was a planned hike at one point. But other than that, we didn't plan anything. And it was my most favorite experience because we already were a collective. We already were a bunch of people who had been working together. And we just dropped deeper into the work that we had been doing.
And so there was no need for more planning.
No. I mean, the work was already there. This was the end. And so this was really about the relationships. Well, so I've definitely I've mentioned that I'm leading a lot more retreats with more intention around kind of my own holding and what's there to nurture me or not overwhelm me while I'm doing that. Some of the mistakes that I've made have been quite the opposite, where I've overextended myself. I've been doing so much. I've been go, go, go and not giving myself breaks. And then when I finish the retreat, I'm still going. And I've really learned to kind of dial that back. And that's been a big, big, big one for me. I think another one of the things that has overextended me has been thinking that I can do things like, oh, I'll swing by this morning before we start and I'll pick up, whatever is being catered by this place. Or I don't need to get it catered. I can do it myself. I can prepare food and I can make really yummy stuff for everybody. There's a cost to all of that. And, there's a cost to outsource things, but there's also a cost to doing it yourself.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah. What do you notice the cost is of doing it yourself?
It's that I am more frenetic. I am less available when I'm actually, supposed to be present. Literally, there was one retreat that I led where I literally had to run out in the middle of the retreat, leave people with like a writing prompt and run out to go pick up food,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? For lunch that particular day. Like literally, I'm not present in some of those situations. And that to me feels like, no, that's not how I envision doing things anymore.
There's something that makes it really worth it to lean into other people so that you can just sink into your role. Yeah. One thing that I know you're really good at, even though I haven't been on a retreat with you yet, I know you're just good at this in life, but in an in-person retreat, how do you make each person feel important and special?
I spend individual time with everyone. So I don't schedule all of the time, and I let people know where I'll be available, where they can find me, and I make sure that everybody gets some time with me if they want it.
Mm-hmm. And what does that time look like?
It varies depending on who it is. It's sometimes we're just continuing some of the work that we're doing, or they're just asking questions about something. Sometimes we're creating plans or structure for when they leave. On some of the business retreats that I've hosted, sometimes we're really digging into the structure of whatever they're putting together and whatever they're plotting out and taking a look at it. I find that one-on-one time is really important. It doesn't have to be a lot of one-on-one time, but the one-on-one time is needed.
Mm-hmm. If someone is just listening to this now, they're thinking of running a retreat for the first time and they want to jump into it, what do you think would surprise them about the experience? What do you think is maybe harder about it or just different than what they might anticipate?
I think selling a retreat, it's there's a much bigger investment. It's a bigger investment in many cases than buying an online course or signing up for therapy. It's also vulnerable and there's travel involved. There's a lot of pieces like that people need to consider. So there's a lot of lead time that's often needed in terms of getting the idea out there and letting people percolate on it, because it takes a while and then they don't always purchase until the very end.
How far ahead do you tend to start getting the word out there about your retreats?
It depends on the retreat. Like there's one that I'm probably going to plan for this fall, and I might not put too much time out there because I don't have it planned yet. But it's also one that a lot of local people have already been asking for, like literally like knocking on my door and asking for it. So something like that, I don't think is going to need as much lead time. But otherwise, I think like 9 months is a good amount of time to really gestate an idea.
Mm-hmm. And to start kind of letting people know. Do you find that for retreats, maybe more than for other kinds of offerings, that the people who sign up have already been aware of you or in relationship with you for a while?
Not always.
Mm.
There is also a lot of nurturing that happens through emails or social media posts. Just when people respond to things that I've put out there, whether it's through a podcast or it's through an email that I've sent or whatever the form of advertising is or marketing is that I'm doing to get the word out about it. When people start responding to that stuff, I have to nurture those relationships. I have to really let them know that, what is there for them. And it's often through that nurturing that people will sign up.
So people get into some kind of conversation with you, and then you're just helping them understand what the retreat is and figure out if it's right for them.
Yeah, and just reach out to them. Let them know that, you saw that they like something and do they have any questions that they want to hop on the phone and talk about, kind of thing.
Any other things you've learned about marketing and filling your retreats?
I think swag or sponsorship sometimes can be an interesting piece of a retreat too. It drums up an interesting piece of energy around the marketing. It's also a really big time investment, and it's more relationships to nurture. So if you're doing it all yourself, it's another just piece you want to consider about how much energy do you have to go where. It sends people home with a little extra goodie bag and makes them feel a little bit more special. And so that's another really nice component to give some consideration to as well.
Yeah, tell us more about how that's worked. Like, what's a relationship you've nurtured in this way?
There's a bunch of them. I tend to reach out to local makers, people who make tinctures or lotions or energy bars or scents or candles or whatever, you can imagine there. And just let them know, like, do you have any samples or something that you would want us to give away as swag for this event that we're hosting? And this is what the event is, and this is when it is, and this is where it is, and this is who's coming. And people, tend to respond really generously to stuff like that. There's a few local companies where I've really developed some wonderful relationships with. And companies are also often really, really, really willing and eager to provide samples of their amazing products to other local companies. So those are fun relationships to nurture too. And you get to kind of peek inside of businesses that are really different than your own.
Oh, that's beautiful. And you get to support other local businesses and have them support you. Someone asked me recently, and, of course I had an answer for them because we're doing this, but someone asked me recently, well, what kind of online offer could you give someone in support of an in-person retreat? And so, I told them about what we have done, which is virtual retreats, otherwise known as webinars, but we don't love that word, that we've done that have been on topics that are absolutely part of this in-person retreat. So we did imposter syndrome and we did leadership style in the way that we do it.
And that we're also ending the retreat that we're hosting with 6 months of ongoing online support, which I think is another really interesting way to do things. When I did the mentorship program, which was all online and then ended in the retreat, that was also a really nice balance. However, some of the feedback I got is that people wanted the in-person meeting a lot sooner. And so I think that what we have going on here is really amazing, where people will come and be with us and be all together and really get to know each other. And then we continue things online.
That does feel really perfect, especially for a business retreat, in that, you're fired up after those days. You're fired up after 4 days of sinking in. And then there's that risk of, after you leave a retreat, there's absolutely that risk of just life kind of rushing back in and forgetting what was so important at the retreat and that was so transformational, and kind of dropping that. And then that can be so disappointing. So yeah, I agree. This is such an exciting way to do it, where we've already anticipated that, where it's like you can kind of sink in more knowing we've got another check-in a month from now. We're going to be reminded of all of this a month from now.
Yeah, it feels great to me.
Mm-hmm. Rebecca, have you ever had a low moment or a scary moment in planning a retreat or in delivering a retreat?
Only one. I think every retreat comes with a handful of them.
Yes.
And one of my mentors, before I really started going into retreats, reminded me that whatever I was bringing to this retreat for people to do their work on, I was going to have to be faced with doing my own work on shortly before the retreat. Right. So there was a parallel process that was happening in many ways. And, I'm making this up now, but if I was going to lead a retreat all about imposter syndrome, then I could probably guess the day where my own imposter syndrome would start popping up.
Yes. Yes. And so you want to really be sinking into that and doing the work that you need to do.
And recognizing that when it shows up, it doesn't mean you're not set up for doing this. It means you're going through it to be reminded of what the journey is that you're taking your participants on. That's a piece of it. And when we forget that our own work is a part of being able to lead, that's where we get disconnected from it. But when we keep that experience kind of in line, it's really supportive and it really helps.
Mm.
I think another one is knowing who you're co-facilitating with.
Mm-hmm.
And working through whatever, sometimes you know them well and sometimes you don't know them so well. And we don't always know that everybody's doing their work. And so that's another component. I've facilitated retreats with people in the past where other facilitators haven't been doing their work. And that's, just more to hold.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm thinking for me, when I've done particularly the couples intensives retreats that I used to do, I remember there being kind of these panicky moments when I wasn't trusting myself. Like when, whether it was imposter syndrome or just performance anxiety, that there would be moments when I would kind of feel ungrounded, panicky, and just kind of not trusting that I had what I needed in the moment. And that it was always in just getting back into the moment and reconnecting with the people in front of me that would bring me back into flow and bring us back into transformation. That there's always this like leap of faith that you can plan, you can, hopefully not over plan, but you can plan, but still shit is going to happen. Like it is unpredictable. And so to lean into that and allow it to be like, allow the moment to lead you as well. That's kind of what's always saved me.
Always. And I think, one other thing that I do is I often will, there'll be planning that I do, and there'll be either stuff I've written in my journal, or there'll be books that I've highlighted, and things that I know are like kind of my rocks that help me out. And so I'll bring those with me and I'll peruse them on my downtime if I need a little extra support.
Yeah. Any tips? I know this is funny because you and I'm going to get to benefit from this tip, but any tips on communicating with your co-facilitator before and during the retreat?
I think it's important, and I know we're doing this, but I think it's important to have some good time together right before the retreat, and then check-ins kind of throughout, and downtime, and have your own spaces as well. I think, everybody needs to have their downtime, and you don't need to be with your co-facilitator all the time, but you do want to kind of check in. I do really recommend that at the end of the retreats, there's also a check-in, but it's not immediately after the end of the retreat. It's like, you take a breath, you both rejuvenate yourselves, you write your own notes, and you come back to it like the next week.
Oh, smart. Okay.
Yeah. You're going to both be overwhelmed, like you want to check in with each other. You want to talk about it. You want to talk about what you learned. You don't want to do it as soon as your participants leave. Yeah. The impulse is to talk right away, but I personally don't work that well that way.
One thing that I haven't asked you about, we've kind of touched on it a little bit, is nature and how nature fits into your retreats. And I know Menla, where I haven't been there yet, but I've seen pictures. I'm so excited. I know Menla is right in the middle of nature. Yeah. How does nature work as a factor for you?
There was one retreat that I was leading at Menla, and we were in their big yoga studio, and it was summertime and the doors were wide open. And there was all this wildlife that was tromping by. There's all these big windows so we could see it all. And, on our first night, there was a bear that walked by. And on the second day, there was a deer that tried to walk into the yoga studio.
Oh,
So nature was all around us. And in many ways, it was kind of holding and supporting us, and reminding us to slow down, and that we were kind of sharing their space away from our own. And then there were these amazing trails and just outdoor spaces and gardens and places just to kind of pause and reset and be refilled by, which I think it's a really amazing part of the retreat, is to have grounds like that where we can kind of really slow down and get away from all of the busyness.
mm.
I'll also mention Menla does have Wi-Fi, but they don't have cell service.
Mm.
And that I think is another interesting piece that, people can get in touch with you if they need to. There's phones in all the rooms, there's Wi-Fi, and yet you're not as connected as you might otherwise be.
So anything else that I'm so excited in this conversation. I'm just so excited to learn more from you and with you by actually getting to do this. Usually I don't interview people and then we go do the thing together that we just talked about. So this
It's
is
so
great.
funny though, because so much of our relationship has been built off of interviews. We've had all these opportunities to talk to each other, and then, we just wanted more and more and more and more of that. And so we started creating those spaces for ourselves.
Yes. Yes. And this 4-day is such a celebration of getting to really deep dive into that together. I keep telling people, if you and I had a baby, it would be this retreat. So
It's
I
our
guess we are.
bi-coastal baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been saying that too.
Yeah.
I think I borrowed it from you.
And we have so much in common in the way that we work. And then we also are just adding these different layers. And I'm just so excited about getting to do that.
I am too. Should we talk a little bit about signature?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Anything you feel like we haven't mentioned about signature that we want to make sure we mention for people who might be a great fit for it?
I think that one of the kind of hallmarks of this event is that it's really about helping our participants to dive into their own signature, into the work that they're known for, into their unique contributions in the world, into their messages, into the stuff that really helps them shine, and to do it in their way.
Mm-hmm. So many of the people who I work with and who are working on doing that, one of the huge obstacles is feeling like life keeps happening and maybe they've got another part of their business that is making them money, and it's really hard to carve out the time, carve out the space for this new dream, and to even just give it the energy to form. And so, this is really in response to wanting to give people that, because visionaries so often don't have that space.
Yeah, visionaries need time to vision.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that's another piece, is that, we want to help everyone who comes on the retreat not just sit down and vision, but actually put plans together and leave with something that feels more concrete. And then that's also where the 6 months of support comes in following the retreat.
Yeah. And I'm going to predict that for some people, part of what will happen in that planning and in that clarifying is realizing what they don't have to do anymore. That's going to help make space for this.
And, I think also we all have heard all of the, this is the way you do it. This is the way you do it. This is the way you do X, Y, Z. And one of the things that I think is really special about our retreat is that we're not coming in to be the gurus to tell you how to do things. We're coming in to help you find your own authority.
Yeah. So I think this is really right for someone who has a little bit of a feeling like they're done with that. Like they're done with gurus, and maybe have even tried following someone else's business plan and have noticed that it doesn't really work for them.
I'm really excited for it.
So Rebecca, one thing that I think people don't talk about, but happens a lot, is something that's happened to me, which is you plan a retreat and you don't get signups and it doesn't happen. So this happened to me years ago. And I know from, having clients and colleagues that it has happened to a lot of people.
It's happened to me too.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I've started to look at these kinds of experiences, these moments, as learning opportunities. And one thing that's really helped me is to think, how much would I pay to learn how to do this?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then if I start thinking about the time and the energy and the money that I'm spending to put this together as that kind of investment, as that learning opportunity, it shifts something for me. And suddenly it opens up a space within me where I'm more okay with this, because this is what I want to learn. And sometimes I don't learn through things going right all the time. I learn through what kind of pivots do I need to make, or how do I need to do things differently next time. And so I've run retreats where I haven't gotten the signups I've wanted, or I've had a lower amount of signups than I've wanted. And sometimes I've filled some of those spots with a scholarship spot or something like that. And sometimes I've just run a smaller retreat, and sometimes I've canceled it, and sometimes I've changed the date. I've done a variety of things there. The point is that I have decided I really like doing this kind of work. And so I keep doing it. And I have a number of successful retreats that I might not have had if I gave up and didn't try.
Oh, yes. I love all that. Yeah. Yeah. I also think that sometimes people need to see a particular offering more than once before they're ready to do it. So, absolutely, if somebody is really wanting to try retreats, wanting to run them, and then it doesn't go well the first time, I think it's so important for them to listen to what you just said about this could be part of the process. This could be part of the process that is going to lead to you being a wonderful retreat leader.
I'm thinking one of the retreats that I hosted in my home was one of the ones that didn't have such great turnout. And in the end of the day, there wasn't a huge cost to run that retreat in terms of actual financial output. There was a cost in terms of the energy, but not the financial output. And so it was an easy one to say, like, let's do it anyway. We have a handful of people, let's do it anyway. And learned so much and enjoyed it so much that it was an amazing lesson. And so I think, that's something to just kind of keep in mind too, is locations. That as much as we can go and we can rent an amazing retreat center, we can also do things on smaller scales where our investment is more moderate, is more what we feel like we can absorb.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can bootstrap and start that way and build from there. Absolutely.
I definitely have.
Anything else, Rebecca, that you want to leave people with about, who are interested in perhaps running retreats? Anything you want to leave them with?
You don't always have to take care of things like accommodations, certainly not if it's a day retreat. And in some cases, you could host a retreat and people can find their own accommodations. But if you are doing accommodations, to offer people options about things like sharing rooms or having a private room. I find that those are often big deals, and they can make or break a decision. If you're offering accommodations, you don't want to just pigeonhole people into a certain experience.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so true for me. I needed a single room to participate in something. Yeah.
Yeah. I recently went on a retreat and I had a double room with somebody I didn't know. And we had really different thoughts about, I guess, what time bedtime should be and when to turn the lights out. And, it became like a thing.
Yeah.
So, we ended up having to switch roommates and it worked out totally fine. But it's definitely a thing to give some consideration to as a host. The comfort. And I think that's what this is really about. It's about the comfort of your participants. One of my early retreats was an equine retreat for therapists. And it was mostly all outdoors. And it was a little cold. And people were coming from all over the place, and some were more familiar with the cold and some weren't. And there wasn't really any indoor spaces to warm up. And, going back to some mistakes, that's something I would do differently. I would find a different facility where my guests could be more comfortable. People learn better when they're comfortable. And the discomfort also pushes edges a little bit. And there's something to that. But I think we also need comfortable spaces.
Me too. And I think you and I both tend to work with a lot of highly sensitive people, as highly sensitive people ourselves. And I think that gets even more important. Yeah. Thank you so much, Rebecca.
You're so welcome, Annie.
Thanks for diving into, after all these years of running retreats, the lessons that you've learned. This is so valuable.
Yeah. And I think I'm still learning. I just want to kind of put that out there too, that I feel like this is a long-term thing for me. And I'm really invested in it, but I don't know if I've learned everything yet. So I'm happy to share my part of the journey.
I love that. You really see in-person retreats as part of your long-term future.
Yeah, more so than I think I see regular therapy.
All right, that's a very cool place to end. Where can people find more about you and Signature Retreat?
At connectfulness.com, and specifically in regards to the Signature Retreat, it could be connectfulness.com/signature-retreat or rebeltherapist.me.
Right. So rebeltherapist.me/signature-retreat, or just go to the show notes for our conversation and you'll see it there.
Thanks, Annie.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thanks for listening. Rebecca and I would love to support you in finding your signature and expanding into what's next for your business. Go to rebeltherapist.me/signature-retreat to apply and register. I'll see you next time.